Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time with interesting people than I would ever get on my radio show. And speaking of radio shows, David Lammy, do you miss yours?
I do, James, I do. And it's sort of strange because people say, you're foreign secretary, but the odd person says, you're the LBC guy.
Where did it all go wrong?
Yeah, and I think it's mainly because occasionally I got the pleasure of standing in for you, which is a much bigger show than my little thing on the weekend. But I do miss it. And the thing I miss, James, which I know that you will understand that a lot of people don't understand, is the listening. People think it's all about talking. And more than anything else, it's about listening. And I hadn't realised that I had that skill until becoming an LBC presenter.
Gosh.
And I am a better listener by virtue of doing all those stints presenting. And I know that I will go to my grave blessing God for giving me the skill to listen and for this opportunity to listen to these and the intimacy of the folk that follow you. And you have the most amazing progressive set of followers, so it's a real kind of these numbers phone. You see their names and it's a family. So I miss that.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
I miss you too.
Yeah.
We should begin at the beginning, which is in 1972 in Whittington Hospital in North London. Both of your parents were Guyanese, very much part of the Windrush generation. Dad arrived first. Did they meet here or?
No, in a sense, my mother was my father's second wife, and it was very much arranged. It was arranged back in the village between my mother's adoptive mother and my father's mother, and my father sort of sent, "I need a second wife." People said Rose would be good. And that was kind of how it happened. They didn't have the best marriage, to be honest. My mother was a quiet country girl with a hell of a lot of principle. And my father was an urbane city guy with a bit less principle. A lovely charmer.
Sure.
But they had quite a tempestuous marriage, to be honest. But yes, he'd come here in 1956. He'd fared fairly well. He was very popular. He had this wonderful knack of friendship, and unusually for his generation, friendship well beyond racial stereotype. My father had a lot of white friends in the 50s, 60s, 70s. He loved to drink in the pub. So our house was not. It was typically West Indian in one sense, but not. It was slightly bigger by sheer virtue of his personality.
I often get little moments in my notes when I'm preparing to interview somebody where I think that somebody's Wikipedia page has been doctored or that there's some mythology has appeared in the story. Was he really a taxidermist?
He was a taxidermist.
Did he bring his work home, David?
He was a taxidermist. So the story is he wanted to be a pharmacist.
Right.
People forget that the Windrush generation, they came and they very much built the NHS, the nurses. They worked on the railways, the buses, but they also came on a sort of program of working in different parts of manufacturing. And in that era, taxidermy was huge. It was still a big deal. Posh folk went out and shot big animals in Kenya.
Someone had to stuff them.
And someone had to stuff them, and people, your cat died and got it stuffed. It was a big deal. And some of his work is still at the Natural History Museum,
really?
Actually, and he worked for
Have
a
you been
big.
to see it?
I have seen it.
Cool.
Yeah, I saw it when I was culture minister. He worked for the biggest taxidermy company at that time. And Roland Royce, I think it was called, and he that's what he did. And we grew up with these animals.
Quite weird.
It
But not weird because it's all you know.
Well, it was eclectic. It was an eclectic, and he ultimately went into business for himself. He wasn't a very good businessman, but he had a factory in Tottenham. Fun enough, there's a story because he rented out some space in the very early days in his factory to a young lad who was soldering things together and making stuff, who goes on to be Alan Sugar and Amstrad and all the rest of it.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
So yeah, but he was a taxi.
Should have got some equity
Yeah.
instead of some rent. That should have been a way forward. Were you comfortably off then as a family? There were 5 children.
No, we weren't, because we weren't comfortably off. I mean, we could have been, but we weren't, because Dad had a problem with alcohol.
Right.
He had a problem with alcohol. He wasn't a good businessman.
When do you become aware of that, and indeed of fractiousness?
Well, I guess, I've got elder brothers, but we're now, I guess, into the late 70s, 80s. Taxidermy is waning. Animal rights is becoming big. It's not a good business to be in.
I never would have thought of that, but of course it's not. It makes perfect sense.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
And of course it's completely faded away, really, as a skill. But the bottom line is, Dad this is the 1980s. The economy's not great. Taxidermy's not great. He starts to drink. I suspect he's got demons. You don't quite know what. In that era, men didn't sort of, you don't know, but things aren't going well for him. And as a consequence, in a very patriarchal family, and my mother was working very hard, but not making very much money. She worked in London Underground for a bit. She then worked for Haringey Council as a housing officer, but not making very much money and not very worldly wise. He leaves when I'm 12. Never see him again. He goes to America. He doesn't tell us that he's leaving. And I remember him, kissing me on a platform in King's Cross and saying, "Take care of your mum." And I thought he was coming back, but I had a feeling he might not, and he didn't. So I would say that we then become quite poor. And actually, I talk sometimes about being working class and social mobility, but the truth is, really, I'm raised by a single parent from that point onwards. And the truth is, if you've got a parent that has addiction issues, there's a kind of chaos and you don't quite know what's coming next, is the truth. And so there's that sort of dysfunctional element. That doesn't matter, but that's not about what class you are. That can be, you can be terribly posh and have parents who are alcoholic, and it's not a lot of fun.
Sure.
Drugs or alcohol.
It's trust, isn't it? You
Yeah.
can't trust the adults.
You can't
in your
trust
life,
the
which is
adults.
most-
I remember one Christmas, my dad bought me a chopper bike. Now a chopper bike was a big deal, and a fantastic kind of braking system in the middle of this bike, and I was so excited. He bought it at Christmas. By New Year, he had sold it. To fund his alcohol problem, and he'd said it was nicked, and we sort of knew it wasn't nicked. He'd sold it on. So that's the sort of stuff that stays with you.
Do you think that your mum consciously wanted to get you out of it? Because I think a year or two before your dad left, she, with the help of the parish priest, with church being a huge part of your mum's approach to parenting, got you into choir school.
Mum and I were a great team. I mean, we were a great team. So I think my mum was always very focused on education. I think it would be too strong to say she wanted to get me out of it,
Right.
because she just didn't have quite that kind of confidence. She had a quiet purpose, and that was education, but get me out of it would have been a bit stretching. But the truth is, I wanted to get out of it. I had this fierce ambition way beyond what was capable. I don't know where the hell it came from, but it was there. And so it was a kind of teamwork, and I also
So you didn't know what you wanted, but you knew that you wanted more than was available in Tottenham.
it wasn't just it was that in what I sometimes think is that Tottenham was parochial. It wasn't just local. It was, I didn't really move much beyond the N17 postcode, and that was, it was small. I felt it was small, but more than that, I sometimes moved into these places either with my father, because as I say, he was gregarious. We'd go on trains, we'd go on journeys. He had friends who were way beyond the N17 postcode. And the truth is that I did see the way that sometimes people patronised my parents. There was a sort of, this is the era of Alf Garnett and, love thy neighbour, mixed blessings. Comedians really taking the Michael out of black people, black skin. It was very, very regular. And we were sort of fringe, really. And I saw the way that, sometimes I was in these settings where people were patronising my parents. And I thought, I don't want that.
You were sensitive to that?
I was sensitive to
Did
that.
you talk to them about it?
No.
Never?
God, no. No. I was just precocious enough to know that was what was going on.
Right.
And I guess my dad would have known that was going on. But, as is the case with lots of first-generation immigrants, wherever they are in the world, they nod, and there's a meekness.
Don't make a fuss.
And they don't make a fuss as they persevere.
Sure.
And I was sort of acutely aware of that, I guess.
And so you set yourself on a different course.
Yeah, I didn't know the hell I was going to do it. I had no idea how it was going to be possible. And I think I described it in one of my books as it's a bit like sort of Wizard of Oz. I sort of fell down a rabbit hole and turned up somewhere else. And,
You've also written about the fear of prison, not because you were likely to become a criminal, but because...
Well, I don't know, maybe I was.
Well, as you looked around, that was an avenue that perhaps was better trodden than others.
Yeah. So, a close relative of mine ended up in prison. A lot of the older guys in that period in the 70s were ending up in prison. And there are tough parts of this country. If you went back in time, Salford, Brixton, parts of Belfast, for a whole range of reasons, where in certain eras people did time. They went to prison. And this was a generation in the 70s where a lot of the older these guys now are in their 60s, but they're sort of 10, 11, 12 years older than I was, disappeared. It's like an epidemic. They just disappeared off the streets. And you heard stories of being beaten up badly by the police, being framed, but you also knew that there was a lot of criminality, casual, petty criminality, but nevertheless it was criminality. And so prison was this deep fear of being locked up, taken away, out of control. And it did for my youthful imagination landed on this, and it stayed in my head for many, many years. And I guess a trip that I made to a prison, I think it was Maidstone, I must have been 10 or 12, stayed with me. It just stayed with me, and I fixated on it as the way that young people can, and determined that would not be my destiny.
Did you have much interaction with the police in North
Yes. I don't say much because
Sure.
I avoided the police and wherever that would could happen. So I wouldn't say much, but I did. I remember I can't now remember how old I was. I'm forgetting. Was I 12? Probably 12. In those days, I had a curly perm. Oh my God, how sad I must have looked. This was the era of fame. Everyone had leg warmers and curly perms. But I remember being surrounded by, I don't know, 5 or 6 officers who said I fitted the description of someone who just mugged somebody, who patted me down. I was really, really scared. And I wet myself on the street. That's how scared I was. I was scared of being on my own with these officers and being patted down and, was I going to be thrown into the back of a van? And that was that.
There's already in your life an extraordinary duality then, isn't there? Because you've got this chaotic home life, difficult community, and by dint of your mum's belief that you would become the Black Aled Jones, I haven't made that up.
I met Aled Jones, obviously, in the studio here.
Did you tell him?
Yeah. Since then,
is that the sights were set upon the King's School in Peterborough because you had the voice of an angel.
Yeah,
apparently,
I did actually, and that was my mother's faith, going to church. A wonderful vicar, Father Ken, wonderful Welsh vicar, great socialist, by the way, and a head teacher and wonderful music teacher. You meet these people who have a sort of powerful conviction, and these are people who had a conviction in that era to the inner city and to working in places like Tottenham. And I wish... they're not alive for me now to sort of quiz them on why they had that vocation. But there was quite a few of them that landed on me and they spotted something, and they spotted a determination and a sort of that sense that he doesn't want to stay here. He wants to get somewhere, and I'm going to help this kid. And it makes me very emotional thinking about these characters. And I'm so grateful for oh dear, I'm getting emotional now. For all that they did, really, to support me and my ambition, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
And that's a recurring motif in your life, isn't it? The consciousness of the path not taken. Would it be? Could you talk about escape? Is that the right word? Almost from another possible future.
You could talk about escape, but you could just talk about ambition.
Yes.
And in certain...
Well, I'm just tying it into that fear that you felt. That kind of...
I see. Psychologically.
Yeah.
God, it's so complex.
Of course
There's a deep fear, and if I was being honest, I think there's also... People these days talk about traumas, don't they?
Yes.
And anxiety.
You've already said 2 or 3 things that I think would qualify as trauma from a therapeutic perspective.
So there's that, and then there's this sort of self-belief. There's the hope. There's the kind of there's the relational bit where you're making friendships with these adults who are trying to support you and get you to a better place, and you hold on to them for dear life, and it's hopeful and it's exciting. And it's different. Some of them live more bohemian lives. You step into their homes and there are all these books and stuff. I mean, all we had was Mills and Boons and encyclopedia. So there's all. So I always. This is not all negative.
Sure.
There are many upsides, but they alongside Mum. I get to Peterborough, which is a different world, which is a new town. There's Roy Kinnear in this era is quite a big figure on British TV and is advertising moving to Peterborough, and lots of EastEnders have moved up there, and it's just different. It's full of Peterborough Cathedral is this awesome building, and these days I'm in the House of Commons and I stand up and I do a speech, and that's another awesome building, but it all starts in Peterborough in many ways. I find my voice there, and even though it's not easy, there's racism, it's the 80s.
Explicit racism.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
Because we're almost identical ages, and I didn't remember much from my school. I wouldn't, because I'd only ever have been an observer of it, but I had lunch recently with a lad who was a few years behind me. And he was still very traumatised by the racism he experienced at my school at exactly the same era. It was just there, and teachers didn't really step in to stop it.
No, and sometimes they too were more explicit about it.
Of course.
Because it wasn't, I don't know if you found this, it was an era of hard knocks.
Character forming.
Character forming. That was the view.
Yes.
Yes. So if you could survive that, you live as an adult kind of holding and with a sort of weird, what's that, Stockholm syndrome, where you're grateful for the character forming. I mean, it's quite bizarre, but that was part of it. And by the way, yeah, there was racism, but it wasn't, there was lots of isms.
Yes.
There was sexism. There was classism. There was homophobia. But everyone gets kicked. It's not, in fact, there was
something in everybody.
there was still corporal punishment.
Yeah.
We all got whacked. So it wasn't, that was the era.
And it strikes me there's two interviews here. There's the interview of the King's School chorister in Peterborough and the interview of the North London schoolboy growing up in Tottenham. But of course, you're both of them. Did you switch? Did you consciously, when you'd come home for the holidays, or did you consciously switch? Did you feel yourself changing?
Yeah, I mean, and that dichotomy, confusion.
Yes. It's another trauma.
I lived with for many years.
Right.
Would
your voice change?
Am I working class? Am I middle
change?
class? My voice broke late.
But would your accent change when you?
My accent.
Yeah,
God, yes.
Home.
God, yes. I was watching a video of me in Parliament. When I first got in there. I was so posh. My kids said, "Dad, why are you speaking? How come you spoke so posh in your late 20s?" And the truth is, I'd practiced. I'd watched, Pygmalion and My Fair Lady, and remember there's, Audrey Hepburn's practicing elocution, and I wanted to be a barrister, so I had to lose this North London. I wanted to fit in, and in that sense, there's a part of my nature that does want to fit in, wants to go with the seam, and just back to Peterborough. Peterborough is a kind of every town.
Yes.
It's Middle England. It's the Fens. It's a great way to learn about England.
Yes.
It's a great place to sort of fit into. And by the end of that journey, by the time I was 18, I fitted in.
So much so that you became head boy.
Absolutely.
How proud was your mum?
Oh, she was my biggest cheerleader, so she was very proud. There were, and actually, I guess in that sort of precocious kind of way, where if I look back psychologically, making her proud propels me for most of my teenage years and well into my 20s, well on to becoming an MP. Just the thrill, the joy, the hope and possibility. Again, I'm getting emotional
so am
saying
I.
this. You'd be a very good therapist, James. You know that, of making her proud.
Yes.
I mean that's the overriding emotion, really.
So you start almost collecting these achievements. First this, first that, first black this, first black that.
And it's an addiction.
I can see that.
It's an addiction.
So when did the academics kick in? Because it's all very well being able to sing like an angel, but presumably you had to produce the goods academically, not only to thrive at King's, but also to become head boy. You were there on a scholarship, but it was a choral scholarship, I think.
I think I was precocious. I don't think I was terribly bright at 11, really. I was pretty average. I struggled a bit with concentration.
Okay.
I had to really practice revision.
But you had the ability to practice revision.
Well, I did towards the end.
Right.
I sort of worked it out at about 15. Partly because I thought, bloody hell, if I don't get my GCSEs, I was the first year of GCSEs, I don't get to stay here. I have to go back.
Right.
I suddenly realised I want to stay here.
Transactional nature of qualifications as currency.
Yeah, I've got to get these grades and stay
Wow.
in sixth form.
So you pulled your socks up.
So I pulled my socks up. And, so it sort of it started to happen. Really, from the moment I got my GCSEs, I was off.
Right.
I was off. I didn't look back.
And when did the barrister ambition kick in?
Yeah, I mean, I had this thing of wanting to help people. I'd begun to realise, despite everything, I was a bit of a bridge builder as a person.
Why do you say despite everything? Because it makes perfect sense given
Because
what
I
you've
guess
told us. You're already a bridge yourself between two very different communities.
Even then, I must have had an instinctive feeling, but I've learnt as I've got older that some people can take these experiences and become bitter.
Yes.
That was never my personality trait, thank God. I wasn't. Neither of my parents actually had that. They weren't bitter people or sour people. They were both hopeful people who liked to laugh in different ways. So that wasn't my nature, thank God. And all of that experience led to this place. Folk wanted to help me. I reached out to them. I was a bridge builder. And I think I decided that law would be good because I cared about justice questions. This was an era I was very preoccupied with apartheid.
Right.
And Nelson Mandela and Steve Biko and what was going on in South Africa. There was a big debate about sanctions and boycotting South Africa, and Margaret Thatcher was in power, and then the riots were happening over her period, and there was a sense of injustice. It was a time of these big cases, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, the Tottenham 3, these big cases of injustice. And that started to speak to me, and I thought I could be a lawyer arguing on behalf of people.
Well, so this is a bit of amateur psychology from me then. So this is the two Davids. There's the Davids with the burning sense of injustice, partly because of what you've seen happen to people you grew up with in Tottenham, and you've seen older members of the generation disappear. So that's where the sense, the feeling comes from. But what school and education gives you is you realise just in time the tools that you might need to do anything about it.
Beautifully put. And then into that mix, throw some of what I was experiencing, the racism I was experiencing in Peterborough, the at moments, but also wonderful pastoral care, making friends, building bridges, people being really generous to me. And so into that mix comes, I can make something of this. I don't quite know where it's going, but let me land on law.
Why not teaching?
I did think about teaching. I thought about the priesthood.
Did you?
I thought about acting.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the justice angle, and there was a bit of me, this goes back to watching my parents being patronised and feeling rather small and parochial. There was a bit of me, frankly, that with the hood and the gown and the sort of power, it was just too appealing. So that was, I think, there was a show on in the 70s and early 80s. It's a wonderful show. It used to play at lunchtimes, and I'd go home for lunch sometimes. Crown Court.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Self-contained stories, but really, really theatrical, aren't they?
And I love the show.
Yes, I get that. Before we get to SOAS, which is where your A-levels took you, your A-level results took you, I'm just interested in the Broadwater Farm riots unfolding essentially at home when you were away at school. It's another sort of moment of dichotomy, isn't it?
Massive moment. It was a moment of, oh God, fear, shame. Tottenham at that point became totemic in a beyond football. Up until that point, people only thought about Tottenham really when they were thinking about football. And from that point, in that era, with the Prime Minister we had at that moment, sadly because PC Keith Blakelock was hacked to death, which was a hugely monumental development in the national life of our country. Tottenham came to Tottenham for the wrong reasons, and I was from Tottenham, and
everybody knew that.
and everybody knew that stigma was very real and very live. But behind that story was pain on all sides, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that's before you sort of rise through school to become head boy, and it's a fairly effortless journey then to SOAS, back to London with your A-levels in your back pocket, and your legal training begins in earnest. So you've got your eye on the wig now.
Yeah, I don't want to give it. I always worry about making it sound too. It wasn't effortless because I lacked a certain kind of discipline.
Okay.
I was struggling at that stage with, again, the doubt and self-doubt you have when you grow up without a father.
And you said something once about worrying about who would teach you how to shave, and I found that very moving.
I remember that not being able to do a tie.
Yeah.
I saw an old teacher of mine, Miss Hartrop, the other day, and she reminded me that in the first class that I was in for A-level English, we had Chaucer, and tears started rolling down my eyes, and I thought, why have I chosen English? I don't understand this, and everyone else in the class does. So there were. Of course, no one else understood it, but I thought.
I was going to say
but basically insecurity
coupled with precociousness. It's a weird cocktail, isn't it?
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to lose that insecurity because that stayed with me for many, many years, and I have up until relatively recently had imposter syndrome at nearly every critical stage of my life. And certainly on a more personal level, at moments in nearly every decade of my life, struggled with anxiety.
Right.
So I don't want to. It wasn't all plain sailing. I mean, I don't want to give that impression.
No, I should have said seamless rather than effortless.
Okay, fine.
You moved smoothly, but
yes.
while struggling yourself. When did you notice that the imposter syndrome had gone?
In this job.
Are you serious?
Yes. Finally, it's gone.
What about that? How incredible!
Finally, it's gone. And I had no. I just didn't. And maybe it's also getting into your 50s. I had no idea. It's just.
You mean literally foreign secretary, not shadow foreign secretary?
No. Foreign secretary. It's always been there. It's always been there. There's always been a moment at every single stage, becoming a parliamentarian.
Yes.
Stepping out into Tottenham after the riots. I had a panic before I stood up and did the Windrush speech. Every single moment I can look back, getting married, and there's a sort of imposter syndrome. Can you? Is this me? Can I do this? Can I carry this off? I literally walked into number 10. The Prime Minister asked me to be Foreign Secretary. I walked into the Foreign Office and I'm going to get emotional again. And something just fell off my shoulders. I had arrived and there was a powerful sense that I'm the right guy in the right job at the right time to do this. And a certain kind of innate confidence in my ability to do this that has carried me through and continues to this day.
Is your mum still with us?
No, she's not. She
didn't see this moment.
She didn't see this. No, she saw me become an MP.
Yes, I know that.
But she died back in 2008. I would so love her to have been. I should say to you actually, James, when I walked up to number 10, I had in my pocket. That morning I woke up and I thought I'm going to take a photo of my parents. So I had a photo of my parents just after they'd got married in my pocket, and I walked into number 10. At that stage, Sue Gray was still Keir Starmer's chief of staff. Sue grew up yards away from me in Tottenham. She grew up in a very working class family. There was mental health in her family. Sue's a bit older than me, but I sort of remember Sue, literally living on Phillip Lane at the bottom of our road. I remember her. I remember her walking past. She always looked she carried the world on her shoulders, and she was very purposeful. And we both had a hug and a little cry because we both knew at that stage, my God, we've come a long way from our backgrounds. In the Irish community and the West Indian community, very close, very close.
It was the first achievement. It was getting into Parliament that prompted you to tried to track your dad down, I think, and getting hold of him in Texas and
Well, actually, he tracked me down.
right, okay.
I guess I could be found.
Because you had appeared above the parapet.
Yeah, I'd
as it were.
appeared above the parapet. I think he was very proud. I know he was very proud. He tracked me down. We had spoken on the phone. He actually tracked me down when I was at Harvard. And that was a big decision. In 2003, it was during the Iraq War, we got word that he was dying badly of throat cancer. And he was effectively a pauper by then. And I chose not to go and see him. I'd grown up without him. I decided that for my own well-being, this was not going to be a good idea. I did go after he died, and I got him a headstone. And I, told him I forgived him at his graveside, because I did. I absolutely. And I got a sense that he died quite broken.
Yeah.
But I chose not to go, and I was worried that would haunt me, but it was the right decision.
Good. Why America? Why did you set your sights on? I mean, Harvard is fairly hard to say no to, but you do have to apply for it in the first place. So, what made you decide that your future, possibly that bit of your future, lay on the other side?
There's a part of the story that is the United States that's incredibly hopeful, where everything is possible. There was a glitzy show on TV at the time called LA Law. There was a very, very, very charismatic Blair Underwood. You've got him right. And I thought, I want to be him. He had a much better curly perm than I had, and so that was how it came about. And I sort of applied for this thing that I didn't really understand, and very strangely, months later, the application came back and said, you've got in. And also at the time, in a kind of very British way, there were some kids taking the British Inns of Court School of Law to court black kids, saying that they're failing black kids left, right and centre, and it's all subjective, and it's racism and this, that, next thing. They were a bit older than me, and I thought, my God, I've got to have a plan B. So it was really a plan B.
Right.
But a plan B that sort of, I did the Inns of Court School of Law, I got through it, but then the Harvard application came back, and I thought, well, I've got to go. So that's how it came about. But I guess also, James, and you will have, you've interviewed lots of people, lots of African Americans and Brits. There's a familiar story, isn't there, of the minority leaving Europe and going to the States and kind of getting a kind of. So in America, I found a black middle class
Right.
at Harvard. Wow, this was like, this was different.
Because I know, I mean, speaking of television programs, the Huxtables.
The Cosby Show, we love that show and all that it meant. So there was this whole possibility and this whole thing and this whole network. There was something I had to touch.
Right.
That was a long way from Tottenham or Peterborough, and do it for myself. And I did not find myself, because that would be way too strong, but I found some things that were very different. And the truth is, I came back from Harvard and working in the States with a huge ego.
Why did you come back?
Oh, I missed home.
Was it that simple?
Massively. I missed Walker's Crisps. I missed tea. I missed Ribena. I missed EastEnders. I missed everything about home. California, I was working in California. It was great, but it wasn't the UK. And the truth is, we talked about this before, James. I think I am very English.
Yes.
I'm very bloody English. That's what I am, and I missed home. So that's why I came back, and I'm grateful that I came back. But America gave me a confidence. Harvard gave me a confidence that propelled me into the House of Commons. And that moment is a moment where I look back and I still can't quite reconcile the confidence I must have had at 26, 27 to run for Tottenham with the guy I am now, because that was the most unbelievable thing I could have done.
A little bit of if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Then you came home with
maybe
perhaps
maybe.
that wouldn't have developed in quite the same way or at quite the same speed if you'd stayed here for the early years of your legal career, the earliest years of your legal
Yes,
career.
I think it would have gone. Yes, I think that's probably right. I think that's probably right.
So where did the political impulse start? When did that kick in?
Well, I talked about justice and social justice being a big theme, law being the thing that I'd connected to, but politics being there very strongly, being very argumentative, having lots of rows with Tories. A great friend of mine at school, James Adams, was a big Tory. James sadly, that's another story, was killed on the London bombings, actually. But I was very argumentative, and I guess I moved. I did what sometimes happens with lawyers. You go from visiting someone in a police cell to asking bigger questions about why they're in the police cell, or representing a small business that's gone bankrupt, about why has it gone bankrupt, and you go to policy. And I've always been very interested in policy and politics. I'm a Labour man, but I wouldn't say I was a Labour animal.
No.
I've got a politics that's pragmatic. I can find common cause
and a means to an end rather than an end in itself.
You've got it.
I think
You've got it, which puts me in the
not the biggest majority.
well, no, I was going to say the sort of moderate wing of the Labour
yes,
Party.
Of course. Yeah, there are lots of you actually, and again, there are lots of nice milestones when you get into Parliament as well. I mean, both statistical ones, but also achievement ones. When you seconded the Queen's speech, I think you announced your arrival really with that, didn't you, on the parliamentary stage? Certainly caught Tony Blair's eye.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, there's if you know me well, and I know you a little bit, James, so you're not that different in a way. The ability on a big stage to perform, but actually privately capable of being quite gauche, quite shy. And one lives with that.
Yes. But you clearly had the right stuff. I mean, we're now in the period of your life where people are aware of you and will know some, if not all, of what you did. What are the moments for you? I mean, there were tuition fees. You were particularly interested as you achieved ministerial office. Going back to what you said about the Inns of Court and other black students challenging the status quo there, you had a look at how many black teenagers were getting into Oxford colleges and things like that. Was there a uniting force? Was there a theme to your politics, or were you collecting causes based on authenticity and interest?
Yeah, I've always reached for a certain authenticity in the way that I've chosen to do my politics. Politics can make you desperately cynical, but I think I've still got an hopefulness and an optimism. I would say that my career is in thirds, and I'm now in the third act. The first act is under Blair, a junior minister under Blair and Brown. I'm very proud of, when I was a health minister, of something called the Diabetes National Service Framework. At that stage, people still had their limbs cut off when they got diabetes, and it's an illness that plagues a lot of black people, and I put in the first system to really grip that and deal with that. 4-hour waits in A&E were mine. I was a junior minister that delivered that. Tony asked me to move to culture and to lead the commemoration on the abolition of the slave trade. And then on higher education, I started this, and I got a lot of stick for it at the time, this big debate about who gets to go to Oxford and Cambridge, you might remember.
Yes, I do.
And challenged them on the amount of kids from poor working class backgrounds in the north, or black backgrounds in Tottenham that weren't getting to go. That's changed. It's really David Cameron picked that up when he came into office, actually, but that has changed a lot. But in that period, I did a lot on fair access. And then the second stage is really as a backbencher where I find my voice in Parliament. It starts with the riots.
2011.
Most definitely. You've got Windrush, you've got Grenfell, you've got Brexit and the second referendum campaign.
So you had no problem whatsoever processing being in opposition in anything. You relished it more because of the freedom it gave you?
Everybody said opposition's terrible. You can't make anything happen. You can't change anything. David Cameron asked me to lead the Lammy review.
Yes.
I actually found I had a lot of power as long as you've got your voice and you know how to use it. And I somehow did. And then at this stage, you then become sort of this elder statesman. Yeah. And you've got portfolios. I'm now senior within the Labour Party. I co-chair Keir's campaign to lead the Labour Party and help my mate become leader. And so I'm now in this arc of obviously governing foreign policy at a very tough time. That's the sort of journey. Those are the sort of three acts, I think.
There could be four.
Maybe they could be four.
How do you deal with, especially with a young family, how do you deal with some of the nastier behaviours of people in the media and public discourse?
Public discourse has got a shed loads worse.
Worse than ever?
Worse than
the
ever.
1980s?
Oh, well, maybe. I mean... Yeah,
feels that way to me, but I'm not in the...
It's personalised.
Yeah.
People seem to lose touch with the fact that you've got children. Social media's made it wicked and nasty, such that you can't read it. And if you've got anything like anxiety, it will feed it. You worry about your children a lot. I'm lucky I'm a London MP. I'm at home every morning, at home every evening, other than when I'm abroad in this particular role. But as an MP, my kids are very proximate to me. They matter hugely to me because I didn't grow up without a father. In a way, as a human being, I would say that I have found my working life, that purpose of my life, a lot easier than the personal side of my life. Being a father, being a partner. That's the stuff I've had to work at hard.
I suppose in a way there are manuals, or at least precedents for being Foreign Secretary, but the personal stuff is you have to learn it as you go along. You really
particularly
do.
If you come from a dysfunctional, broken family.
Yes,
you have
exactly.
to learn it, really work at it.
So you clearly enjoy being Foreign Secretary. How frustrated have you been by the things that you can't do? And most obviously with reference to Gaza and the difference between being in opposition and being in power.
I'm sitting here 2.5 years into that war and feeling incredibly the suffering. It's unimaginable that we're still here, that it's still going on, that I have not been able to stop this by sheer force of sort of character. But I guess I do know that if you're the German foreign minister, the French foreign minister, the Japanese foreign minister, the Qatari, the Saudi Arabian, we all feel the same. And you sort of plug away day after day, and eventually it will come to an end. But you just don't know the day in which it will come to an end. And then you also recognise that there's a war in Ukraine, there's a war in Sudan. I am doing this job at a time of immense conflict.
Yes.
And but the UK, the world wanted the UK back. It wanted us present. It wants us here. It wants us playing that role.
Because we cut ourselves off in 2016 and then again in 2019.
We did.
And you were working on this as a shadow.
By the way, there are elements, I wouldn't say in Ukraine, but there are elements where that period of cutting ourselves off, it has been a bit of, I've been returning to the table.
Yes.
And sometimes when you're returning to the table, people are not, the world's changed a bit since we were in the table. There are a lot of middle powers, countries like Turkey, India, the Gulf. These are much bigger players today than when I started in politics 25 years ago.
And of course, some of the colonial deference has disappeared now as well.
Oh, that's we're in a post-colonial world.
But we weren't when you started in politics. There were still vestiges of it, echoes of it.
Absolutely. You earn your spurs at the table.
It's interesting.
And you have to sort of, there's a phrase, what's the phrase? The wisdom of a snake, the calm of a dove. I mean, I don't, you have to be pretty, you have to have your wits about you.
And your skills in place. So as you sort of struggle with the tension between what you can do and what you can't do, how do you decide whether you've done a good day's work or not?
Oh, God, look, let's be clear. I wanted to connect Britain again. I mean, I am genuinely, if someone had said we'd have done what we've achieved just in a year, really built back those bridges in Europe. A new deal with the EU, Ireland, Germany, France, that low moment in the Oval Office between Donald Trump and President Zelensky. The day before, we had a high moment with Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. Then that low moment. And then where did Zelensky come the next day? He walked up number 10. Yes. We all breathed a sigh of relief. There was Keir Starmer, a warm embrace, and Britain back where it should be. So proud of that, proud of the trade deal with India, a new approach to Africa, things like Gibraltar, problems that we got through. We have done a lot. Ukraine is still in the fight. We haven't cracked Israel Gaza, but we've got medical aid into Gazans.
Well, when people say you could have done this and you could have done that, whether it's the F-35 jet parts, or I mean, there are many people who will never be satisfied, understandably, as long as Gazans are still being killed. But I mean, is there something you wish that was feasible to do which you haven't been able to do?
The most important underlying question that people ask me, and I think they're absolutely legitimate to ask me and push me on this, is we can't be complicit. That's what they say. And I am reassured that the decision I took in September not to send our arms because I felt there was a clear risk of a breach of international humanitarian law means that we're not complicit. Now, then people say, but you are still exporting stuff to Israel. And yeah, we do send things. If a university wants some chemicals that are on the export licensing, or some journalists want some body armour, or NGOs, we do still send that. But we're not sending anything that the IDF could use to be used in Gaza. We're not actually sending direct parts to Israel that could be used in an F-35.
They go to Lockheed Martin.
But there is this global pool on the F-35 that we do put into. And so we can't guarantee that something does not end up in Israel.
Without pulling out of that pool altogether. And people say, pull out the pool. Yeah, but they don't. Do they really mean it? Are they really saying we should ground important aircraft that's used to keep Europe safe? Should we really turn around and tell the Baltics, look, sorry, you're on your own with Putin? I don't think they really mean that. So we've done all that we can do to make sure we're not complicit, and I'm satisfied of that. But I want to bring the war to an end. And of course, I wake up every day doing all I can to, not just on my own, but with partners, to bring this war to an end. And to end on the fourth act, the possible fourth act, I suspect you've been asked since you arrived in Parliament whether you were going to be or whether you wanted to be Britain's first Black Prime Minister. It's a rhetorical question there. Is it? Do you still think of it occasionally?
I always feel that I let people down with my answer, because they ask that not really about me, but hopeful about a certain kind of possibility in Britain. I see Keir Starmer get up every day. He's a friend of mine. His work rate is phenomenal. He moves from policy area to policy area. he's doing the job at the toughest of time, particularly for our economy. And do I think I'd like your job? No, I don't. No, I don't.
That's 50%.
I just don't.
50% David Lammy answer, 50% politician. There, I'll take that. No, I'll take that. David Lammy, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, James.